name is Dr. Mario Wallace, and today's discussion is about my book, the one and only Strategy Is Spelled ADEM. So before we get started, make sure you subscribe to my podcast by clicking on the link below and turning on your notification to receive uploads as I upload them. So the question I get asked the most is, how did I come up with the title and what does it mean? So, I chose the title because it indicates the beginning of my impact to the field of strategy management. So when you give a name to the object, whether it's a person, place, or thing, it indicates something special to you. And the reason why I gave the book Strategy Is Spelled ADEM the name, because it's special to me. It indicates a beginning of something. It indicates the birth of something. And in this particular case, it indicates the beginning of how do I go forward and impact strategy management. The book Strategy Is Spelled ADEM includes the acronym ADEM. And ADEM means analyze, develop, execute, and manage, which is the full cycle of strategy management. This book is not just about strategic planning, which is the development of a plan, but it's the full cycle of strategy management. It takes readers through all application and phases of strategy management to effectively manage a strategic plan. So why did I write the book? I wrote the book for busy executives and mid-level leaders so they can understand the phases of strategy management as well as the elements within the phases so they can manage the full cycle of strategy. So what I've learned from working with busy executives over time is that they expect two things. And one is they want to know the full cycle of the strategy process. And the second is they want to know a point of reference within the phases as they execute and manage the strategic plan. The book is structured into three themes. The first one is theoretical knowledge. The second one is case study application. And the third one is scope of work, step-by-step processing of application of strategic plan or the strategy management process. So unlike other strategic planning books today that mainly focuses on theoretical knowledge and case study application, my book focuses on those two but goes a little further. I include a scope of work in my book. And the scope of work explains how to implement the ADEM strategy management process step by step, using throughout all the phases of the model as well as all the individual elements within the phases to help you apply the model in your work environment. So the strategy management model in the book evolved from an 18-month research study that included leaders from across multiple industries such as healthcare, acute healthcare, community health, and higher education as well as small business. During the research period, I instructed leaders on the strategic planning process, not the full cycle of strategy management, but individual strategic planning process. It was more of a disjointed, unstructured format. We use tools such as traditional tools in strategy management, such as the PESTEL analyses, the SWOT analyses, Porter's Five Forces, the balanced scorecard, and so forth. Most of those models are structured, but they're structured for independent phases of strategy management, not the full cycle. So I explained all of those different strategy management frameworks to the leaders and showed them how to apply them and allow them to go out and develop their strategic plan. I also told them in the process of developing their plans that I would do and conduct follow-ups with them periodically every quarter to see where they were in the process and how was it going for them in their application of their strategy. Findings of the study revealed that leaders became exhausted in the application of strategy management. They wanted something more linear, something full cycle in which they knew or understood the beginning the middle, and the end of the transition. During the study, I also administered a survey to gather information to help me understand the themes in which gave them more problems and themes that didn't give them too many problems. And what came out of the survey is the leaders felt confident and were good at analyzing and developing a strategy, and they were poor at executing and managing a strategy or a strategic plan. So that evolved into what we have now, the ADEM strategy management model, whereas we identify and we focus on 4 phases within strategy management consistently, and those phases are analyzing, developing, executing, and managing strategic plans. So the analysis phase, which is the first phase of the strategy management model, focuses on 5 elements, and those elements are market analysis or environmental scan, external interviews with stakeholders, internal interviews with executive leadership, focus groups with mid-level leadership, and town halls with frontline staffing. In order to ensure that your entire institution or organization is fully engaged throughout the full cycle of strategy, these particular elements within the analyze phase must be performed. There must be an effective environmental scan identifying what your competitors are doing and areas of opportunities and areas of threat within your organization. That information must be socialized with external stakeholders, the board and so forth, leaders within your communities and different partners, so they can help you, based on that information from the environmental scan, they can help you identify those threats and opportunities, how you can work collectively together to mitigate those threats and seize those opportunities. Then you need to socialize that information with executive leadership, because they're leading the organization and they need to be able to provide feedback on that information, as well as the mid-level leadership. Most of the time we forget about the mid-level leadership and we shove strategies and we shove those strategies on them and expect them to execute those strategies when they are disjointed and not truly connected to the strategic plan. And lastly, we must have town hall meetings so that ask the frontline staffing for their feedback on the new direction of the organization. When we go into this new direction, there may be a lot of changes in how they do things. And what we do know is that we have to mitigate change resistance. Based on a new direction, you're implementing new things, new technologies, new processes, and people are high performers currently. When you take them into a new model, they can go from a high performer to a low performer easily. So we have to make sure that they are bought into their strategic plan. Thus, we have to have town halls and get their feedback and use their feedback to take to the retreat and start to developing the goals, the objectives, and so forth of the strategic plan. So the development phase of strategy management is actually the retreat phase, which consists of 6 elements of the strategy management process. And those elements are the strategic vision, the change agenda, the objectives or the goals, the measures and targets, the initiatives, developing a strategy map, a 1-page document that looks at the entire strategy, and a balanced scorecard, looking at the goals and objectives, measures, targets, and initiatives within one document so we can see their performance within a scorecard. Now, at the retreat, the first thing is to start to build based on the market analysis data of the environmental scan, we should be able to build the strategic vision. What is the direction of the organization, and when should the organization reach their time horizon, right? So a strategic vision must identify what day in the future the strategy should be completed. A strategic vision doesn't consistently go from strategy to strategy. It's based on those things that, and those opportunities and threats you need to focus on within a period of time. After you develop the strategic vision, you build what we consider a change agenda. It tells the leaders and organization what changes need, what hard changes need to happen within an organization, right? You identify elements within your model that needs to be changed. You determine the current state of those elements and the future state of those elements. And in between, you see the transition. The transitions helps to build the objectives, the measures and targets, as well as the strategic initiatives. The initiatives they're strategic because they focus directly on something within the strategic plan, and they help to move the measure towards the target. After that is done, a strategy map is formed, which a strategy map consists of 4 perspectives, and that is talent and technology, the internal process or processes, the customer perspective, and the financial perspectives. We organize the objectives within those perspectives in a way where it creates synergy, meaning that the sum of the whole is more important than the individual parts, but we need to see how they connect with each other. And lastly, post-retreat, before we get into the execution phase, we should take our objectives, measure targets, and initiatives and create a scorecard. And that is a card in which we will use at our strategy review meetings to discuss the progress of the strategic execution phase, which is the 3rd phase of the ADEM strategy management model, looks at 6 different elements. And those elements are, risk management. What is the risk within the strategy? Alignment. How do you align the organization to the plan? Cascading. How do you cascade objectives throughout the plan? And I may be saying these out of order. Resistant management. How do you manage resistance within the plan? How do you communicate the plan effectively to stakeholders, internal, external stakeholders, the community, and so forth? And personal scorecard. How do you align the individual employees to the strategic plan? So what does that mean? The first thing, once a strategy or a balanced scorecard is developed from the development phase of strategy management, you need to look at that scorecard or that strategic plan, however you've formatted it, and identify strategic risk within the plan. Strategic risk can lie within an objective, a target, if the target is too far out to reach within a particular phase in time, and strategic initiatives. If initiatives can't be funded, we've identified funding for an initiative, and the funding could be based on budgeting or fundraising. And the fundraising event or the budgeting process, we find out that we cannot fund that particular strategic initiative, but the strategy, parts of the strategy hinged on that strategic initiative, then it creates risk. So we highlight the risk within the plan. We develop action plans based on the risk, mitigating strategies, and contingency plans in case those risks actually show up in the plan. Then we align the organization. So basically, we determine which business units and how should they be aligned within the strategic plan, starting from the executive leadership and those units in which they are responsible for. How do they align to the plan? And once we determine the alignment across the institution, then we start to cascade objectives down the plan. So which of those business unit owns which objectives and which initiatives? And regarding the initiative, how can the initiative be more cross-functional so that we can ensure that not just one business owner or executive leadership on a particular area of the plan, but make it cross-functional, so to help the organization to work collectively together as a whole. Next, we begin to train and educate our functional managers on risk management, because one thing that will happen within a strategy is that, as I said, in the analyze phase, when you introduce a new change into organization based on a strategy, people will fall into two groups. One will continue to be high performers, and some will start becoming low performers. So what you have to do is manage the risk. So you train and educate functional managers, those who are closer to the action, those who are closer to the frontline staff, and on risk management strategies. So when they start to see the risk, they can capture the risk and mitigate the risk, so it won't actually impact the strategic plan. Then you create a communication plan, and a communication plan should be communicated based on the strategy review meetings, based on when you have your review meetings and look at your plan to determine the progress and learn from your plan. You should be communicating out after those meetings, draft those communication messages so that everybody in the organization is communicating the same thing. That you draft those communication messages and you begin to communicate the progress of the plan or the shift and changes in the plan to your internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, community as a whole, so everybody knows where we stand or where the organization stand within the strategic plan. And lastly, you need to consider personal scorecards. So how do you align individuals within those business units to the strategic plan? And this is very critical because personal scorecards helps in performance reviews, because one thing that employees say mostly when it comes to employee engagement surveys and information is that when there are no clear set goals and expectations for them, it disengages them. So using a personal scorecard can help them align to a plan, especially in the onboarding process and ongoing, where they always know where they are whenever they come to work, exactly what they should do every day, and they hold themselves accountable. The management phase of strategy management consists of 4 elements, and those are governance calendar, initiative review, strategy review, and strategy refresh. And let me explain all 4 elements. Once the strategy is developed and the execution plan is in place, now it's time to start managing the strategy. The governance calendar should be developed to identify when the meetings would take place, when the initiative review meetings would take place. So it's communicating it across the organization as well as with internal and external stakeholders and board members, in which that is mainly monthly, but we need to identify a day within a month. Next is strategy review. That is when you look at the entire strategy, including the initiative. So you look back at the initiative and see how the initiative is moving or are moving measures toward their targets. And this is the iterative process time when you learn about your strategy. Things, maybe you set some of your targets too high or too low, and you can adapt and adjust at this phase within strategy management. And also you can build your communication plans around this phase in strategy management. Lastly is the actual strategy refresh. And strategy refresh is way different than initiative review and strategy review. So strategy refresh is done mainly near the end of the year when you actually go back and do an environmental scan and test the viability of your existing strategy. And based on if there are new changes and new shifts within the market, at this time you can pressure test your existing strategy to see if it's still effective, and how to adapt to the current market, or how to push or lead the market in the direction you want the market to go in at this point in time. But you have to do a strategy refresh every year, and based on changes to the strategic plan, you update the plan, you republish the plan, and you communicate the plan to the internal and external stakeholders as well as community at large and the board members, to show them that the plan has been based on the market so that you won't get disrupted. The strategy has changed. Some certain elements within the strategy has changed. It has been communicated with the organization to get buy-in, And you go through the process somewhat of the full cycle of strategy again, but just small elements, such as based on the changes, have a town hall with the entire organization, explain the changes to them, publish the plan, give them copies of the plan, allow them to give you feedback and survey and so forth, and identify where those resistance points are, so you can start working on those resistance as going forward within the next year. So the book, Strategy Is Spelled ADEM, is a book that educates executive leaders and mid-level leaders on the full cycle of strategy management, not just strategic planning, not just the development of a strategy, but how do you effectively execute the strategy and manage the strategy going forward. Unlike other strategy management books that exist today, this book goes a little further by providing a scope of work. And within the scope of work, leaders can see exactly how the elements, leaders can see the phases of strategy management, the 4 phases. Leaders can see the elements within the 4 phases, and leaders can determine the action steps that need to be executed within each phase, all the different elements, and the type of tools. I discussed the tools in the book that you should use, and I actually include a lot of the tools in the book, or give you resources on where those tools are, so that you can effectively analyze the market, develop a strategy, execute a strategy, and manage a strategy going forward. This book should give you the tools to be successful in your journey as a novice strategy manager or an advanced strategy manager. This book will give you this book will give you the tools and the confidence to be effective in executing your organization's strategic plan.